Hello, Ken Spriggs here, and welcome to my YouTube modeling channel. I'm beginning a new how-to series that I'll do from time to time to go over some various tutorials and tips and tricks on using different materials and tools in building models. Various things that I've learned over the years of doing that myself, and also new techniques as I learn them as well on my builds. I will be certainly continuing my builds, including my discovery board that I'm working on still currently. I think a lot of times those of us who are a little more experienced take for granted that that every modeler out there knows all of these various ways of building, and maybe they don't. I know there are some things that I've only learned within the last few years or even year that I wish I had known a long time ago. So I want to try to explore those. If you have anything you want to see or any ideas, put it in the comments, and I'll certainly consider that for a future video in this series. So this week we're just going to look at a basic overview of a lot of the things that we'll talk about in more detail in the future. All right. Okay, so here's my workbench that I use, and I took a pretty decent dinner tray, folding dinner tray, and I nailed on a piece of plywood which matches the dimensions of this cutting board. So this cutting board is one of the first basics that I'm going to talk about. It's kind of nice to have. You can buy these fairly easily out there. I got this one at Hobby Lobby, which I like to go to a lot for different materials. I don't have it attached onto here, but it's nice. It takes a lot of wear and tear, but it's good to use for obviously cutting, but also if you get glue on it and paint and that kind of thing, it's not a big deal. All right, so I'm going to talk about just some of the basic areas of materials or tools that you use for model building, and I have them kind of laid out here. And the first one that I want to show is that you're building a model. The first thing you really need for that is you're going to need some type of glue to glue it together. So there's a whole variety of glues that you can get, and I'm going to recommend a few, but you're going to want to use different glues because the same glue is not going to work for the same materials. If you're using just your standard styrene plastic models, then you're going to want a pretty basic plastic glue. A lot of people use Testors, which is your standard model glue. I prefer Tamiya, and they make a wide variety of glues that are very practical, and I like them especially because they come in a bottle that has a little brush in it. Just twist off the cap, you have a little brush, it's easy to apply. So this is your basic glue that lets you glue the styrene together, and it takes a little bit of time to dry, so you have some working time. Then you have your extra thin, which dries faster. And then this one I like a lot as well. It's an extra thin, quick setting. It's very quick. It's good for very tiny parts and gluing them quickly. For other materials such as resin or photo etch, you're going to want to use some form of a super glue. And I'll go over each of these in more detail in later how-to videos. The super glue that I use, because I have a real problem with the odor of it, it just really hurts my sinuses and my eyes. So I use an odorless CA glue. Works really well. Get it from a local hobby shop, but I'm sure it's available around the country. Another thing I use a lot is a 5-minute epoxy. It comes in a 2-part bottle right here, where you just mix equal parts. I like to use a piece of cardboard or a piece of an advertisement. I get these in the mail all the time from a local dental place. I really like them because they're great for this. It's a nice rigid piece of laminated cardboard, so I just cut it up and use it for my glue, which is awesome. I can also use it for the CA glue. I can put some of that on there and just use a toothpick. But the same thing with the 5-minute epoxies, just put equal parts, mix it around with the toothpick until it's ready, and just apply it. So that works really well. All right, The second category that I'll go into more depth at a later time is going to be paints, because obviously then the next major component you're going to want is how to paint your model. And again, there's a whole variety of paints out there, very different types for different applications. So in the future I'll talk about the different types you're going to want to use for different types of kits and effects and that sort of thing. So but a couple of the main ones that are out there, you're going to have your enamels, like testers, which come in these little bottles, or Model Masters, same way. I used to use these exclusively, but they're a bit problematic because you have to use a kind of a enamel thinner. It's a little more powerful in odor, has a lot of odor and that kind of thing to clean it up. It's a little harder to clean out of an airbrush as well. So you also have obviously your rattle cans or your spray cans, and this is another enamel. Testers is a popular brand, and Tamiya also makes some spray cans. I believe these are considered lacquers, but it's similar to an enamel, but obviously it's a spray can, spraying it on that way. The main ones that I generally like to use a lot are Tamiya's acrylics. Acrylics are water-based paints, so they clean up very easily. They go on nicer. I wish I had found these out several years ago. I just always thought water-based. I kept thinking watercolors. I don't know why I did that, but I didn't really think they would be kind of permanent. They do make a thinner that you can use with it. It's not very strong in odor, so it's a lot easier to use. I like that a lot. And the same with these. So, and then you have another one that I like to use are some oil-based paints. These ones are really nice. These are high quality from 502 Abteilung. This is Starship Filth. I have several other colors as well. And for these ones, you have to use either a turpentine or an odorless mineral spirits to thin them out or to clean your brush. But these are really good for creating a wash or weathering effect. So I like those a lot. So, and as I said, I'll talk about these further on down the road. The third category I want to focus on is going to be your tools, different tools that you're going to use when building your models. And these are some of the basics that really are quite good to use and help you out. Obviously, a nice X-Acto knife is good. I kind of like this one because it's nice and solid with the aluminum, and the blades are replaceable. And so that works well for me. I like to use, for sanding purposes, I use a couple of things, but I use some really simple things that you can get cheaply, like emery boards. You can get several of these for $1 at the dollar store, and they have like your rough side and your a little bit smoother side. So for just cleaning up the sprue and cleaning up little pieces, it's really good to use. I have a whole series of needle files of different shapes and sizes, which are also quite good, which I like to use also. And for masking, I use some Tamiya tape, but you can use masking tape and other things, so we'll explore some of those. I also get, you can see back here, I buy like a cheap $1 or $2 bag of different different grits of sandpaper, just for your basic sanding. So I have some finer ones for really fine sanding, but for the most part, these work just fine, and they're not that expensive. Now, for cutting off your parts, I like to have a nice pair of side cutters, sprue cutters, which are really helpful, cutting those parts out of there. I also have a pair of photo etch snips, which I use for many purposes, which we'll talk about. And then a couple of extra tools which are really nice, a pole saw. I have a couple of these, which are really good for cutting parts, just pulling along it and getting some nice, very precise cuts into it. And then this is a really awesome tool. It's a pin vise. I have different drill bit sizes that I can put in, and you simply just manipulate it with your fingers and drill holes through plastic for getting a much more precise little hole rather than using a Dremel. So, all right, so that's just a basic overview. In future videos of this series, I'll be focusing on particular parts of this in addition to other ones and going into more detail. So, all right, so short and sweet and to the point, that is the end of my first episode of this series. In the future, I will be focusing on a specific area or tool or technique that I'll be demonstrating a little more detailed. And if you have any ideas, as I said, put it in the comments below, and I'll be glad to try to make a video to accommodate that. Also try to work on a little more spiffy intro to this series as well. All right, well, thank you to all my subscribers, and I will see you next time. Thank you.